I just want to start with what Paul Scully was saying there. I thought he spoke quite powerfully, actually, about the comments that were made by Prince William's godmother. He said that it was an example of casual racism. Do you think it was?
Yeah, I think it is. And I just pay tribute to Paul. I thought he spoke very bravely about his own personal experiences there. And that can be very difficult to speak about one's personal experiences. I think it is an example of casual racism. And I think, as I understand, I only saw the news breaking tonight. As I understand it, Palace have moved this individual on, quite rightly so. There is a lot of casual racism in society, and we always have to stand firm against it. I was struck by that this week because we had the census results out this week, and I represent Leicester. And we're very proud of our diversity in Leicester, and Leicester is a city with a majority ethnic population, and I was very struck by the tone of some of the language from some prominent people, actually, around making comments about cities like Leicester and Birmingham in response to this census data.
Are there any comments that you were particularly pointing to?
I mean, I think there were... I mean, I don't want to name individuals because it's been invidious, but, I mean, just the way in which there were sort of suggestions, I thought, particularly on social media, that somehow that Leicester was un-Christian or something like that. I think things like that. And I'm immensely proud of the rich diversity of a city like Leicester. I think it strengthens us as a city. We're a dynamic city today because of our diversity. I imagine the same will be the case in Birmingham and other parts of the country. And I think we should always celebrate that diversity. But it was a sad reminder that there is still casual racism out there, and we have to stand firm against it.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think it feels like it's sort of two kind of examples of that. I guess some would say that. Is there a blurring sometimes of the casual racism that you're talking about and other concerns about immigration?
Look, I mean, people will always have legitimate concerns about immigration because they'll always have legitimate concerns about, economic circumstances and whether the economy is growing sufficiently in order to ensure good, decent, well-paying jobs for everybody. So it's understandable that people will have concerns about immigration. And that's why you've got to have an immigration system which responds to your economic needs, which is why we've said we need a points-based system. We know that there are gaps in the labour market. But what I would also say, and I was saying a little bit about this earlier this week, actually, when you've got increasing numbers of people leaving the labour market, employment is lower today than it was pre-pandemic. There's more and more over 50s leaving the labour market. There's actually more and more people forced out of work for reasons of ill health, 2.5 million, the highest for 20 years. It's costing us 8 billion extra a year. We actually need schemes, initiative, measures to support people to return to work. And one of my big preoccupations is to get Britain back to work and put in place the measures to help people. So I was saying, let's devolve more employment support to local areas because they know they know what's needed in their area. Let's better link up the employment support system with the NHS. Let's reform our job centres because they're not working as the valued public service in every community like they should do, to get the over 50s back to work, to give support for those who are out of work for reasons of sickness when they need it. So there's big reforms that we've been putting forward this week to improve our economy.
I was also talking to Mr Scully about strikes because, of course, we have 10,000 ambulance workers now, obviously a very stressful, very high-pressure job, saying that they are going to strike because they want their pay to reflect inflation. Would you like to see inflation matching pay rises in the public sector?
Well, I mean, as you know, I led on health for the Labour Party for what felt like 100 years. So I understand that NHS staff, whether it's paramedics or nurses or healthcare assistants, are under the most considerable strain and have been asked to do more and more with less than less over many years now, for 12 years. And they face very tight pay packets, wage squeezes for many years. I think the trade unions who represent the health workers will need to negotiate. And that's why it's incumbent upon the Health Secretary not just to say, oh, my door is open, but to actually say, right, let's get round a table, let's see if we can hammer out a deal. Because it's not just about pay, it's also about rota gaps, it's also about safe staffing.
My question was about pay, though, right?
Yeah.
My question was, do you think that workers in the NHS should get inflation-matching pay rises?
Well, they should get a fair pay settlement.
Well, what does that mean? But, I mean, everyone would say they should get a fair... But what is a fair... But let me matching inflation?
But let me give you an example here. The government will have modelling of what is affordable. Now, the government ministers say, no, it's not affordable, it's not affordable. But they're not giving you the full picture because they're not taking into account how many NHS staff are claiming universal credit to top up their wages. Low-paid NHS staff will be getting universal credit. So even though, on the one hand, the government will be saying, we can't give you a pay rise, but on the other hand, they're just topping up their wages with universal credit. The taxpayer is still paying. So it's not a cop-out. The government will have access to all that modelling.
You say it's not a cop-out, but I am really unclear. And I think most people would be quite unclear listening to you as well.
Because you know, in a negotiation, it's not helpful for a politician who hasn't got access to all that dynamic modelling to just pick a number out of thin air and say it should be X or it should be Y. The government know what is affordable. They'll also know what their modelling is for what they will get back in tax, because obviously nurses and paramedics will be paying national insurance and income tax. And they'll also have modelling for how many are claiming universal credit. All those factors need to be taken into account. One
thing that would help make things more affordable is raising the state pension age. Mel Stride, your opposite number at the Department for Work and Pensions, said that there's a review into the state retirement age considering the cost to taxpayers and intergenerational fairness as well as life expectancy. What's your view on raising the retirement age?
Well, we always have reviews every so often. They're periodic, and that's always been the case throughout the recent history of the state pension age. And when these periodic reviews have looked at the evidence, and they are usually independent reviews, when they've made independent recommendations, we have gone along with that. But there has to be the review has to be allowed to take place, and politicians shouldn't preempt it. It's also now got to take into account things like life expectancy, because the assumption has been that life expectancy would improve. And indeed, life expectancy has improved since the war, but life expectancy has begun to stall. But that's why we have an independent review process, and we'll see what that independent review process reports upon. We shouldn't be politicising that independent review process because the public finances are in such a mess because of 12 years of lacklustre growth and the recent disastrous budget of, 2 months ago now, which crashed the economy. It has to be a proper process.
OK, thank you very much for being on the programme. Good to talk. Good to have you in the studio.
Indeed, I love being in the studio.
On the street. It's always a treat. Thank you.